All right, good morning, everybody. It's the last day. Have you been having a great conference? Woo! All right, I feel the excitement in the room. All right, I am Dawn Zoldi. I just 30-second elevator pitch on my bio here. Retired United States Air Force colonel. I was a JAG officer, so an attorney for the military. I did drone law policy throughout most of the end of my career, and that kind of inspired me to create my company, P3 Tech Consulting. And so I do consulting, content creation, and education events. And from the content standpoint, you may have heard of the Dawn of Drones. That's me. We've kind of changed to the Dawn of Autonomy, and we opened up Autonomy Global this year. It's a digital media platform in 15 languages and lots of great articles that work with Sean and so many others on that site. So that's it. I'm going to hand it over to my incredible panel here to go ahead and introduce themselves. So Todd, you're first.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dawn. Hey, I'm Todd Basile. I'm a former helicopter engineer turned technology attorney. I work for the law firm Greenberg, Traurig, and I co-chair our robotics and autonomous technologies group. As a helicopter nerd and a robotics nerd, clearly there's a nexus to drones at this point. I have my Part 107 to get to kind of know the day-to-day and regulatory landscape for my clients a little bit better. Just been playing in the drone sandbox for probably about 4 or 5 years now, and excited to talk about what's coming down the pike.
All right, next up.
All right, thanks, Don. Rob Knochenhauer. I am the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Censys Technologies. Censys Technologies is a drone manufacturer. We build VTOL fixed-wing aircraft that we are purpose-built for BVLOS operations, and my role has been to help people get their safety cases built to actually get permissions to fly the aircraft beyond visual line of sight. Before getting into that, I've been working in the aviation space since about 2014 with a number of different companies. Working engineering primarily is where my background started, and have kind of steered into the direction of working on regulatory affairs in the past 10 years. Is kind of by happenstance, where basically when Part 107 was released in 2016, I was working for a company that wanted to do unattended operations, which none of us had any idea how complicated that would be, and we quickly learned how complicated it was, and that put me in a spot where I started talking to the FAA and figuring out how to build a rapport with them and to figure out how to build safety cases to actually get complex things approved. So good to be here.
All right, Thomas.
Thank you. I'm Thomas Jimenez. I'm the Director of Enterprise Solutions for uAvionix. My career through drones started doing a lot of field work. I did a lot of inspection work with transmission lines in Georgia and in British Columbia. Then moved on, started working also with a lot of energy companies at a drone-in-a-box company. Then I moved over to a Norwegian defense company where we also worked on a lot of situational awareness solutions. And now with uAvionix, I work deploying often with utilities and with energy companies our suite of ground-based DAA solutions, which we sell as a federated network of ADSB. We can talk a bit more about it later.
Awesome, thank you. And please follow Autonomy Global, since I have the slide up here. I know it'll be at the end too. All right, so we're going to first talk about kind of where we are in terms of the regulatory front, and then we're going to get into enabling technologies, and then kind of finish on some operational realities. We have more to talk about, but this kind of first segment is where we're going. Any good military briefing, you tell people where you're going, then you tell them, and then you tell them where you've been. So that's what we're going to do today. So let's, Todd, you're one of the two attorneys on here besides me. Let's talk about the regulatory landscape. Now, this is kind of the what's now. A couple things have happened in the last few weeks. We're hearing that we're going to maybe see something hopefully in the near future. But let's talk about today, kind of where we've been and like where we are as of today.
Sure. So this is probably going to not be news to most folks in the audience here, but from a BVLOS standpoint, that flying BVLOS is the exception, not the routine, right? So most folks are either flying under Part 107 or Part 91, right? And you've got to get a waiver or a 44807 exemption to be able to do that. So that's where we currently stand. It's a painful reality. It's difficult to scale. But people are finding out clever ways to make that work in the meantime, right? So if you take 107, for instance, since that's probably what most folks are operating under, you're talking commercial ops under 55 pounds. You want to fly BVLOS, you either need a visual observer, which obviously more bodies, more paychecks, difficult to scale, but it's useful if you have folks on site. Maybe you're going to do shielded ops. Where you're going to fly so close to the infrastructure you're inspecting or vegetation or what have you that manned aircraft really aren't the risk of having a mid-air collision is significantly reduced given how close you are to stuff. Or maybe you're using detect and avoid technologies where basically you're putting a digital VO either on board or in the vicinity so that it can call out conflicting air traffic. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Again, exception to the rule, not the routine.
Okay, and we've got a slide up here. So 2 executive orders have come out recently. Actually, a lot of executive orders have come out over the last couple of months. But these 2 in particular deal with drones and unleashing American drone dominance. Let's hit that one first, Todd. In terms of kind of the overarching theme for this thing, what are we seeing here?
Sure. So, we've had a chance to work through them. What's encouraging, and again, focusing on the theme here of BVLOS, is that was the first priority in the main EO, right? There's 2 EOs. The one that is relevant to BVLOS was the Unleashing American Drone Dominance. No, we don't have a slide? We have a slide. Okay, there we go. The other one, touches tangentially on it, but we're not going to really get into that too much. But, there is a big administrative push to open that up to make the BVLOS operations routine and not the exception, right? So moving away from where we're at today. I think, probably the most actionable, most important part of that EO, do we want to get in this detail right now? Yeah, okay, is the setting of deadlines, right? So we've all heard Part 108 is coming down the pike, it's not here. When is it actually going to be here? It doesn't specifically reference that, but the order does direct the FAA to do some things on some pretty short time frames, right? So one is within 30 days, and that was of June 6th, so July 6th, the FAA has to come out with a proposed rule for enabling, again, routine BVLOS ops for commercial and public safety.
I want to interject here. So how many people have money on July 4th for the release? Every big rule has been like Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. So my money's on July 4th. It falls within the 60 days.
I mean, there you go. It's much pomp and circumstance.
It's much celebration
right?
on July 4th.
Right, America, right? So, so that's the proposed rule. They got to do that in short order, but then they want the final rule published within 240 days. So that's February 1 of 2026.
By the way, that's my birthday.
Oh, well,
so
then it's
that would be
definitely
like a
on
wonderful
February
present.
1. So, these are hot deadlines. There's some things that go along with that, setting some performance and safety metrics and studies and all that fun stuff that is gonna help them figure out the rules. And then I think probably the other semi-important thing there, a little bit of Uncle Elon's influence, is they want the FAA to start using AI to review Part 107 waiver applications as well. So, looking at historical precedents, when was this allowed, who's involved, what birds involved, what technologies involved, and start connecting those dots and maybe push these things through a little bit faster.
I was actually hoping they were going to use AI to review the comments. So, because I know for the remote ID rule, there was 53,000 comments. It took them like 2 years to adjudicate. And a lot of them were cut and paste. Literally, one organization sent out to all their people, just send this in, and it was identical. So to have AI kind of run through that and be like, here's the 20,000 that are all identical. You can read them at one time. That would be pretty cool, I think. But that wasn't in the EO. So that's exciting. The Restoring American Airspace Sovereignty one really focuses more on counter-UAS. And I've actually broken some of that down on Autonomy Global, so go check that out. And Suzanne Lemieux is in the back. I know she might not want to be recognized, but from the American Petroleum Institute. And if you saw her keynote panel on day one, she mentioned this thing, the rumor is it's going to be 1,000 pages long. And then for the first time, I don't know where you're getting your intel, but I'm assuming Suzanne's intel is good. She said there may only be a 30-day comment window. So that's not a lot of time to digest 1,000 pages and make comments. So if you're in this industry and you care, take the time to do it. It might be on the 4th of July, so grab your beer, grab your hot dog, whip open that 1,000-pager, and make your comments and be heard. That's really, really important. And don't just cut and paste. But I want to talk about the enabling technology. So it's one thing to have the rules in place, which we're hopefully going to be there soon. It's another to figure out, here, I'm going to give you the, Thomas, let you drive. It's another to kind of build that safety case, whether it's by exemption, by waiver, or even under this rule, there's clearly going to be safety requirements baked into it. So Thomas, tell us what we're talking about here.
Yeah, thank you, Don. So just a little bit of background about uAvionix as a company, because it leads in better. uAvionix originally, it's a decade-old company, started 10 years ago. It started as a company that built, it still does build avionics for general aviation. From there, it grew, and then we got into the unmanned space and started building a microavionics for uncrewed systems. So a lot of drones out there today have our chips inside, particularly a lot of the ADS-B chips. And then we've gone on to develop ground-based DAA networks, which are now, to this day, being used by the FAA in control towers. So there's been quite an evolution of what the company has done. So in terms of our specific focus on energy and utilities, because again, we have a broad spectrum of products, we're supporting energy and utilities by planning, building airspace planning tools. So working on a strategic deconfliction process in terms of forecasting 7 days out who's going to be flying in what areas and trying to reduce the risk on a strategic basis. We also build the real-time ground-based DAA networks. So we support our utility companies by being able to locate where their aircraft are and where all third-party aircraft are, and their aircraft being energy or utility-owned aircraft as well as third-party ones. So our focus, or my focus in the network space, is developing these sort of pre-flight and during-flight solutions so as to support those safety cases. And what we've seen is there's a lot of push towards increasing ADS-B in the national airspace. The presence of it at the moment, it's limited to Mode C veils around Class B airspaces. But as that presence of ADS-B increases, we're pretty confident that our ground-based DAA networks will help in simplifying the process for companies like yours to engage and to be able to get those long-range beyond visual line of sight waivers at pace and simply, without the complications that have existed today, and often without the very complex sensors that are involved and expensive sensors, where hopefully we can dial that down so that companies can scale their operations with more ease.
Okay, awesome. And fun fact, Christian Ramsey from uAvionix was on the Dawn of Autonomy back in April. We dedicated the whole month to safety. So you can go back and watch that on demand. There's also an article, and we talked about, I think it's really important, how many people know the why of beyond visual line of sight and why it's a waiver right now? In other words, why visual line of sight is required, keeping the drone in BVLOS. Anybody know? Okay, it all comes from the see and avoid requirement for crewed aircraft, right? You have a pilot on board that can see other things and avoid them. Well, with a drone, obviously, there's no pilot up there. That's why when the FAA wrote Part 107, they put in this requirement for the pilot to have visual line of sight of that drone. So having it beyond visual line of sight is a really, really, really big deal. And that's why technologies like what you're seeing from Thomas are super important for that collision avoidance. That's the staying well clear of other aircraft requirement also for crewed aviation. So let's talk about operational realities. This is where Censys Technologies, you've been doing this for a while, and just give some people, give the crowd some lessons learned as a practical matter, like what you've experienced.
Yeah, thanks, Don. One thing I want to touch on that Thomas covered is, regarding the tools and ADSB and the scene of void element that you just mentioned, 91.113 is the actual regulation that specifies that. But the tools that are being developed are tools that that uAvionix has developed, and the other organizations as well. But we, as an organization on our aircraft, have the embedded ADSB sensor from uAvionix that allows us to have awareness of cooperatively broadcasting crewed aircraft traffic that is operating in the vicinity of where we're operating our drone. And these strategic deconfliction tools that Thomas alluded to here are also tools that we are leveraging to understand what's happening in the airspace to basically assure that we're conducting our BVLOS operations safely. All right. There it is. All right. So what we've done, the company was founded, I'm going to do the background spiel as well here. So company was founded in 2017. Embry-Riddle Aeronautics University is where the founders of the company originated from, and up until about probably 4 years ago, all the employees were ERA grads, and I'm not, so I'm a little bit of an outlier, but anyhow, and the focus from the organization's goal from the beginning was to do beyond visual line of sight operations. In 2017, when they were founded, that was really hard to do. The reality is, in the early years of Part 107, people that applied for waivers, I think the approval rate for the applications, the approvals to application ratio was something like a fraction of a percent. It was very low. And most of the ones that were getting approved at that time were night waivers. So fast forward to where we are today. So what we've been able to leverage over the years, and thanks in part to our relationship with uAvionix, is in 2020, the company was at a bit of a crossroads. So the pandemic was happening, we weren't selling aircraft, and we needed to figure out a different way to move forward. So at that point, we made a strategic alignment with Iris Automation, which is now uAvionix, and integrated their Casio One vision-based sensor into our aircraft. And so that sensor is something that we used as part of our air risk mitigation strategy for basically applying for permissions from the FAA to get Part 107 waivers to allow us to conduct beyond visual line of sight operations. What we've been able to do since then, so that the past 5 years, we've basically been able to move that case forward. So 5 years ago, what we were getting approved were location-based approvals, where basically we do a pretty extensive identification of the risk associated with a single location, put that in front of the FAA, have to wait the 90 days to get that process evaluated, and then get the approval. And if you wanted to go to another location, we'd have to put another approval, another request in place. As you might imagine, doing that is it's very time intensive and not very efficient, and definitely not scalable. Then in 2022, there was a group that was put together, the Aviation the Advisory Rulemaking Committee?
ARC?
The ARC.
The ARC, the Aviation Rulemaking Committee.
Aviation Rulemaking Committee, yeah, all right. a little fog there, anyhow.
Too many acronyms.
Exactly, there are definitely too many acronyms. So there was a group that was put together between the FAA and industry experts that came up with recommendations for what BVLOS operations could look like, and recommendations about how BVLOS operations could occur. And what ended up happening, what has happened, is the rule that's in consideration that we're hoping to get this NPRM on July 4th it has a lot of the elements that are in that rulemaking come from what were recommended in that ARC in 2022. One of the things that was recommended in that ARC was the ability to fly shielded operations. So, as was mentioned earlier, it's like most BVLOS operations, you're either leveraging visual observers, you're leveraging a DAA solution, or you're leveraging low altitude shielding. So the operations that we've been doing at Censys lately have been kind of a mix between having the onboard DAA and leveraging low altitude shielding. So what they recommended the ARC was that you could fly up to 100 feet above the ground or above structures, and do that safely. And so it was probably about a year after the ARC report was released, maybe a little longer, that the FAA, the group that was doing the evaluations of the safety cases, decided to actually allow those operations to fly. And initially they started off, I'm like, well, we don't know about 100 feet, let's start at 50. So they started at 50, and then they eventually got to 100. And then in the past year, they've gotten to the place where they've made a designation for the folks that are here in this room that I think is very relevant to, is the critical infrastructure designation. So for critical infrastructure, they're now allowing operations shielded up to 200 feet above critical infrastructure. So that is actually, for an aircraft like that we operate, that's a good space for us to operate in. So because at the end of the day, you know, why do we want to fly BVLOS? Is because we want to collect the data. Because at the end of the drone is a truck, right? Nobody cares about the drone at the end. I mean, you know, if you crash it, then you know, like, oh, that's unfortunate. Someone does care, but it really, you know, the only reason why people are here using drones is because what you're trying to do is you're trying to leverage a tool that is allowing you to conduct operations that you're already doing more efficiently. So that's really the end game here. And so, you know, what we've been able to accomplish with BVLOS is, you know, we have this aircraft that we built. We've got our next generation is out right now. You know, we've already started we're going to start delivering them next month, and this new aircraft will operate up to about technically about 90 miles per mission, so about 2 hours. But we for the waiver applications, we restrict those operations to ensure that we have at least 20-minute or 25% energy reserve in the aircraft, so that we're not going to run out of juice somewhere. So and the FAA is actually started putting that in the waiver applications or the waivers that they've been granting to indicate that requirement for an energy reserve. So if somebody's saying that they can fly 2 hours, you got to take that into consideration for the actual usability of what you can conduct with that aircraft. And even then, you might have to be, there's the whole engineering aspect, like you get some winds, you get different weather features, where basically, batteries are going to have, there's a sweet spot for the temperature range that the batteries are going to be most efficient in. So anyhow, and these are all details that we've now put into these waiver applications where moving forward, it's not a single location. We've put together a list of requirements that are each client that we work with and ourselves, we actually operate our own aircraft too, that we have to go through, and we want to find an area that's going to be suitable for BVLOS operations. We spend the time going through and evaluating each location to assure its suitability for doing the BVLOS operations. And that's a big change, and it starts to really unlock some of the efficiencies. We still have a requirement for doing two-person crews, so we have assembling the aircraft, preparing the aircraft, and then we have one person managing a GCS and the other person kind of managing the aircraft when it takes off and lands. But it's a far cry from having to have visual observers spaced every couple of miles along a pipeline. So and what we've been able to accomplish is running linear operations up to 20, 30 miles sort of thing out and back, or up to 50 or 60 one direction. So that's a big change, and it's starting to provide some real measurable, usable value. And at the 200 feet for critical infrastructure, we're in a space where the sensors are happier. At 100 feet it worked, but it was like we could have some data quality issues. So the 200-foot spot is actually been quite usable, and that's a good space moving forward.
All right, I don't know if this notice of public rulemaking is going to eat the whole elephant, but 1,000 pages perhaps. I think it is worth mentioning just for a second, even the other executive order. Could you click the slide? Can you just click it again? Okay. The other executive order in terms of counter UAS, right? Because when you think of airspace awareness and protection, if you're flying for 2 hours, you're going 90 miles out, you got to make sure that there's nothing in the way. And so to the extent there could be another drone there, that counter UAS piece is highly relevant, honestly, to beyond visual line of sight and the whole airspace awareness picture. So the challenge right now is that only 5 federal agencies have the authority to conduct counter UAS operations, and people were super excited about this executive order because it mentioned state, local, tribal, territorial, law enforcement, and grant money, and even critical infrastructure got a shout out like, hey, let's get training for critical infrastructure owners on counter UAS. Here's the problem, folks. Congress still has to authorize that. So we're still going to need a law. So everybody's super excited about that executive order. I'm just saying there's still more work to be done, especially in that arena when it comes to wiretap, pen register, all kinds of things that people feel like get in the way of employing those kind of technologies. The other thing I want to give kind of a hat tip to is UAS traffic management, UTM, right? Because you can't have a whole bunch of drones flying around, or even eVTOL aircraft. We're hearing they might be flying by 2028, at least minimally. Actually, if you ask any of those OEMs, they'll tell you Park City, Utah. They'll say that's when we're going to be flying in those Olympics, not LA. But regardless, having that traffic management in place, and I believe the new NPRM is going to have some stuff in there. But what's happening today that's highly relevant across town is the Dallas Key site. And if you're not aware of this operational evaluation, a handful of companies are doing drone delivery, they're doing public safety, they're deconflicting airspace with each other. That is highly significant. And to your point, this isn't just for Dallas. There's actually the approvals the FAA has given for these companies are nationwide almost, and they're popping up in other locations. So, Todd, you live here, you work here. I know you're involved with some of these companies. Do you want to comment for a minute, just while we're talking about what's happening now in terms of BVLOS? This is something real, and it's happening today without that rule.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can't have this conversation without talking about what's going on in Dallas, right? So, as Dawn said, I think it started out with a lot of drone delivery providers teamed up with one another, got into data sharing agreements, and started working with drone service suppliers. I want to say, what's the acronym? Drone service providers, yes, who are basically running some of the kinds of tech that Thomas's company makes, and other things, running basically pre-flight planning, actual in-flight deconfliction, all of it aimed at deconfliction, right? And so, some of them are using ADS-B feeds, which is helpful because most of the airspace around Dallas, I think, requires ADS-B for manned aircraft at least. And so, they're taking various data sources and running little, as simple as I can say it, little mini air traffic control, right? That's enabling these companies to go out there and perform these ops where you otherwise couldn't. And it's a nice pilot program that can be, lessons learned can be transferred to ops in other cities. And I think one thing that I'm kind of jazzed about, I don't have direct experience with it, maybe you guys do a little bit more, but the FAA is using a lot of that information and lessons learned to inform its NTAP program, the near-term approval process. Now, she would absolutely kill me if she heard me say this, but my contact at the FAA, I'm always like, oh, so it's kind of like a mini certification program for one of these enabling technologies, right? It's not, but it is. They're gonna take, say Matrix Space's radar or the Cassia, visual detection stuff. They're gonna figure out, hey, what are the operational capabilities of these things? What are the limitations? We're gonna look at them, figure out where they are, and basically say, yeah, if someone's using this in this particular context, it's gonna work and it's gonna work well. And so we're gonna streamline this process of granting a waiver. Just based on that data. So, there's going to be some players and some tech out there the FAA gets to know very well based on, data that's provided to them, and it hopefully helps streamline these sorts of approvals. I'm encouraged maybe that'll help inform Part 108 and the BVLOS stuff coming down the pike. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to learn a lot of good lessons coming out of that, and it's gonna expand things.
Awesome. I want to talk about what's next. Go ahead, Thomas, you wanted to add to this. Go ahead.
I was going to add one thing on the streamlining process. We also work a lot in public safety, and what we've seen is that the new COW process in public safety has really expedited. A lot of our clients, police departments, so on, are wanting to deploy DFR programs, drone-in-a-box programs, and the FAA recently put a really clear path to approvals, basically simplifying that if you want to fly operations up to 200 feet, you can just visualize third-party ADS-B traffic. If you want to go higher to 400 feet, you need some form of DAA technology. That could be a Cassia G, a radar, anything like that. But they've streamlined the process for these police departments, sheriff departments, and so on, and they've actually made it fast. Like they're returning things in 3 weeks, which was unheard of in the past. So they're getting a lot of success in that new process. So hopefully examples like that are just standardizing processes and getting things out of the door quicker.
Yeah, Curry Fleming from the formerly of the FAA. I know he was running around here at the conference. Hats off to him and his team. They were really behind. If you're not tracking what's happening in the public safety arena, they've really been groundbreaking in terms of FAA approvals and waivers and special, processes. And for acronyms, COW is Certificate of Waiver, COW. That's what he's talking about. So this has been streamlined. And if you don't know what DFR is, drone as first responder. It's basically, 911 call comes in. Instead of sending a patrol out, they send a drone out to get eyes on, and it's really changed the game for public safety. And now we're kind of in DFR 2.0 using drone in a box solutions. So instead of having humans up on a roof, keeping drones within their visual line of sight and launching them from the roof, you have remote ops centers, and hopefully now soon one-to-many. So this is really taking off. Public safety has been an awesome, I think, space and a great use case. And you see this now also, of course, in critical infrastructure with some of the inspection stuff that people are getting waivers and approvals on. So really exciting. I want to do kind of a lightning round on what you think is next. In your respective areas, whether it's regulation law, operations, technology advances, as we look forward to this new rule, what do you think is going to be in it, or what do you think is still needed to really have beyond visual line of sight take off, whether it's in that rule or not? So Todd, I'm going to start with you.
Take off, Don, right?
Yeah.
No pun intended. I think one thing we may see, and there's rumors going around about it and such, is a additional certification component for pilots, for remote pilots that want to fly BVLOS, right? So extra training, you don't just get your Part 107 where, you can watch a couple YouTube videos, study for a couple hours and go get it, right? I think that might go a long way to assuaging some of the concerns, because folks will be out there having the additional context, the additional awareness, maybe even a practical flight training component to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that. I think we're going to see the emergence of more companies in that educational space. I mean, right now the gold standard is USI, right? Unmanned Safety Institute, and they've been doing that since day one. But I think maybe that will be a great enabler to make the FAA comfortable and advanced adoption. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Bronwyn Morgan, she's the CEO of Zio Air. She writes for Autonomy Global, and we have an article coming out about her belief of what those training requirements will be, or what they should be. So keep an eye out for that. But go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, thanks. I'll echo what Todd said. Certainly the training thing has been pretty high on my radar recently. As we've been going through in the past year, a couple of years, getting more and more advanced approvals, what we're finding is that the training is really the most important element. And there's a tell in the waiver applications themselves. Well, not the applications, but one of the things, if you were to apply for a Part 107 waiver, and if anybody's thinking about this, I would encourage you to do this. The FAA publishes a document that's called the Waiver Safety Explanation Guideline. Try saying that 5 times fast, right? So the WSEG, right, is what I call it. I don't know if anybody else calls it that, but anyhow. So the WSEG questions have basically, for anything that you're applying for relief from the rule of Part 107 from, in the case of BVLOS, it's 107.31, there's a list of questions. And they revised that document about a year and a half ago. And when they revised that document, there was a big focus on DAA tech in the document now, as well as training. And so those are kind of the 2 big shifts that they made. And so that's, and from what we've heard about kind of the proposed rule that's coming out, that training is definitely going to be a high focus. And it should be, because I mean, really, the difference between flying VLOS and BVLOS, it's kind of analogous to flying VFR or IFR, right? Totally different flying concepts. So it is important that there be a focus on training for doing BVLOS operations. Beyond that, I think the thing that I am really excited about is the proposed change to the right-of-way rules, because which is pretty controversial. Though I think what is being what I hear is being proposed is that the right-of-way rule change is going to be if you're operating your crewed aircraft below 500 feet and you're not broadcasting on ADS-B, then you are supposed to give way to the drones. That's what is going to be in the supposedly in the rule that's going to be put out for NPRM soon. That's probably going to get a lot of blowback. I mean, I'm confident it will, but it's but I think it's a reasonable compromise, right? It's like, you know, and I think that's been the biggest challenge. You know, back to Thomas's point earlier. We at Censys, we have an embedded DAA sensor on our aircraft, and it costs a lot of money. And there are other manufacturers that have also embedded DAA on their aircraft or are using ground-based sensors for radar to kind of understanding what's happening in the airspace, and that adds cost to the operation. And so if there's a way that we can use simple tools like an ADS-B input, and then maybe have a companion computer that will actually apply some avoidance maneuvers based on that information, it's a lot simpler problem to solve. So that's the thing I'm most excited about. I would love to see that happen. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it would be amazing if it does.
It'll be interesting to see what they do with the hot air balloon people, because they can't maneuver out of the way. No, I mean, this was like a big
right.
deal.
Yeah,
like
yes.
when the ARC report came out, they were very vocal about it. So it'll be interesting to see how that is resolved, because I mean they can't maneuver.
But the thing is, if a hot air balloon is equipped, because you can get an ADS-B output for short money, right? I mean, it's like we're not talking a lot of. It's like, I mean, you know what it costs to operate a hot air balloon? I mean, they're really expensive to run. So it's like the idea of like not being able to equip a hot air balloon with an ADS-B output, because that's the thing is like if you are broadcasting, the drone pilot is still required to do the avoidance maneuver.
Yeah.
So that's the requirement.
It'll be interesting. I want to get to Thomas because we're running low on time. Go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah, we're focusing on two main portions as we move forward. The first one is what falls under the broader discussion. It's called EC, or electronic conspicuity, which is basically what we're discussing here under ADS-B, and it's how both crewed and uncrewed aircraft broadcast their location. So ADS-B is sort of the standard for crewed aircraft, and then we're deciding as an industry what the EC will be for unmanned aviation, but we're leaning very heavily into ADS-B. We're deploying an entire ADS-B network throughout the States. At the moment, we have about 450 sensors. If you come by our booth, you can see they're tiny little sensors. And we want to become the sort of Verizon of ADS-B, particularly of low-level, low-traffic ADS-B, because, again, our company has a very big crewed aviation side as well as uncrewed. And everything that the crewed side are hearing is that the new administration really wants to push EC. Events like what happened in DCA just keep pushing that message. So we're focusing very heavily on electronic conspicuity and leaning heavily into that. We've got one solution which we've already deployed with the FAA, which depends entirely on ADS-B, and they've accepted it. And we've got another one that's going through the process now, and we're pretty confident we'll win. So ADS-B is is very important for us. And the second one is our professional C2 networks. So now that C-band, it's a clunky path, but there's a path to C-band approvals through the FCC and the FAA. We've got our early clients who are starting to fly on protected spectrums as opposed to unprotected spectrums. And so we were very confident that both in the AAM space earlier and in the UAS space, we'll see a lot more C-band integration, and we're investing a lot of money in building out those networks with our key clients.
Spectrum is a whole nother thing. That's FCC, and if you want to get an education on that, my educational event, Law Tech Connect, Todd was involved in it, by the way. I'm putting out, that was at Exponential with AUVSI, but we're putting out these videos of those panels, one a month. This month, we had our Beyond Visual Line of Sight UTM panel that streamed, so you can watch that on demand. There's a related article. There's also an article written by Wiley Rhines, Sarah Baxenberg. I co-authored with her about the new FCC spectrum rules for drones. So again, if you want kind of your PhD in drones and drone regulations and laws, check out Autonomy Global. It's all on there. And this is a great segue to kind of go down the list, and everybody can say what's next for them. I will say a couple things. Tomorrow, actually at 10 a.m. Central Time, we're going to have a stream from the show floor here. Where we taped it Tuesday, but check it out. We have like 10 companies. Some of these folks are on that stream, giving their impressions from the show floor. But Sean Gare actually moderated a panel. Suzanne Lemieux was on it at Law Tech Connect, called Big Energy, the virtuous circle of compliance and regulation. And that's going to stream in July from Autonomy Global. So please check that out. I think you guys will really enjoy the content and learn a lot. You can do it on your own time. So that's all I'll say for me. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I don't have too much extra to add. Looking forward to you have the clicker here. Next month, if anyone's in Houston again, there's actually the Texas Restaurant Show. We're going to be hosting a panel on drone delivery. Is it right for your restaurant? And you know, that's reflective of a lot of my practice. I'm at a big firm. We represent a lot of different industries, and a lot of industries are partnering up with drone service providers. And so we'll be hosting that. I think it'll be really neat to kind of hear it from the customer standpoint, not exactly energy related, but it should be good times. But yeah, just excited, and thank you guys for coming. So.
Yeah, so I think the thing that I'm most excited for, you know, with the advent of the rule, you know, if February 1st is real, which would be amazing, you know, it could put us all in a place where we're all able to do these operations more routinely. And the reality is, like, there are a number of people that are doing routine operations, particularly in the energy and the oil and gas space. It's like it's happening, and but it's still complicated. But it'd be nice to get to a place where it's less complicated, and so I'm looking forward to that. And you know, rising tides raise all ships. So thanks.
All right, Thomas.
Just leave it with I work on networks and all the network side of uAvionix. I really enjoy working with the utility space and the energy space because they're often in a unique position where they own tremendous amounts of infrastructure around the country. And going back to that electronic conspicuity, we want those partnerships. We want to work with these partners to develop and deploy these networks. So utilities and energy are very close to my heart, and I really enjoy working with everyone.
All right, well, that's all she wrote. You all may have questions. We have 3 minutes, but I can also give you your time back. So up to you. Does anybody have a question they'd like us to answer, or we could talk to people offline? All right, it looks like we've stunned them to silence, giving them their time back. Sir, go ahead.
How much of an impact will it have that he just recently signed that executive order, if any?
Oh, okay. So the question was, you know, kind of what's the overarching impact of the executive order? You know, my personal opinion, you know, words on paper, that's awesome. I love that the administration is like showing, you know, waving the flag and showing support for the industry. As a practical matter, it's a direction to a lot of agencies to do a lot of things. A lot of agencies that have been gutted. A lot of agencies that, you know, maybe also have to rely on Congress to do their part. So, you know, whereas that's great and it shows support, all of these, I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I'm hearing things like, oh, inflection point for the industry, or, you know, joyful celebrations all around. It's like, okay, I mean, you know, the Biden administration did the first counter-UAS strategy. What happened from that? Nothing. So, I mean, I'm hopeful that stuff will happen, but, you know, I'm a glass half empty kind of gal. So let's go down the pike real quick. Go.
I've just been nodding along the whole time. I couldn't say it any better.
Smile and wave, boys. Smile
Also,
and wave.
no comment, right?
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Don. I mean, it's like it's words on paper. I mean, I certainly, you know, I recall what happened in 2017, you know, when part of what happened is there was another executive order that led to the establishment of the integrated pilot program, which led to the things like, you know, the DFR program that we know today. So I'm hopeful that it, you know, causes a little bit more pace in the people that are doing the evaluations here. But again, you know, the timelines, I don't know. So.
Thomas?
Yeah, I'm hopeful. Much the same. The good thing is we have 2 key dates on a calendar. So at least there's a line in the sand, which they shouldn't move too far right. That's about all we can see.
So hopefully 4th of July, everybody, notice of public rulemaking, stand by for that, and we'll be covering that on Autonomy Global. So sign up for our newsletter. All right, that is all she wrote, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. You guys are awesome. Appreciate it.